Hello. It's been some time, but I am back with the monthly Koa reading in this March month, Pisces season, Woman's Month, my birthday month, my sister's birthday month, my parents' anniversary month. Just so much to celebrate. And I've discovered this really amazing new camera quality which is live, and the quality becomes much more interesting to look at than it does just on a normal camera. I'm using Manzel's Tarot. Manzel Bowman, I believe that's his name, is an artist. I'll double check and make sure I have the right name. But he's an artist and he created this beautiful deck. I've used it before and I'll be using it again. And for this month, I'm turning the cards over now. You know, I always shuffle first and then, or if you don't know, I shuffle pre and then I pull them over. The concern card, what's going on, objectively speaking, that we can focus on at this point is the Magician. Look at that. Yes, hold on. So, the Magician card, oh, that was like the perfect, there we go. The Magician card is a major arcana card dealing with spiritual purpose and life purpose. Of course, appropriately in Pisces season, Pisces being the 12th sign of the zodiac, the final sign, the culminating sign, the mutable water sign, so like the ultimate flexible quality, modality. And also a sign of creatives, particularly like poets and artists and actors and writers and singers and such things like that. Obviously, there are people who exist like that in every sign, but as a sign, it is representative of that particular kind of artistic quality, muse quality. And appropriately, the Magician would be in alignment with Pisces because the Magician is the first card in the major arcana after the Fool, which is card number 0. 0. And the Magician has all 4 symbols of the tarot deck in its imagery. So in tarot, there's the major arcana, which the Magician is one of them, and then there's the 4 suits, and the suits can vary depending on the deck, but are typically representative of 4 elements: air, water, fire, and earth. Air being swords, typically. Water being cups or chalices, typically. Fire being wands or staffs, typically. And earth being pentacles or coins. And so the Magician is an embodiment of basically the totality of all the energies, including the major arcana, exalted in the major arcana. And it is appropriate then to be in alignment with Pisces season because Pisces is the final sign in the zodiac and the culmination. So what we can talk about is sort of the completion of a cycle, spiritually creatively meaning like our purpose is to be ourselves, and each of us is a unique individual, completely what is the word? I already said unique, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Every one of us is a unique individual, completely designed by individualized experience, gained through individualized perspective, right? Like the way that you interpret your experience and the way that you interpret it, your perspective is yours and yours alone to decide. People can influence you, but at the end of the day, you're the one co-signing in your mind about whether you agree or not, whether you believe or not, what you trust or not, what you do and don't believe. Ultimately, for your own existence is your own choice. Doesn't mean you're going to be exposed to everything you want to be exposed to, but that ultimately of what you're exposed to, you get to decide. And you know, that's so much more expansive and rich in quality than people really give it credit for. Obviously, if you don't have the resources on earth to survive in a way where you're not in a desperate or like scarcity driven environment, there are definitely limitations on your experience that are artificial and that have nothing to do with you know, the natural order. Whatever people might say about law of the jungle, we could talk about that another time, but like humans are not the most dangerous species. We think and we made tools, and like good for us that we have opposable thumbs and stuff, but if you get stuck, in a wild place with wild animals and you ain't got your tools, you are not a born killer, buddy. Like, you ain't got claws, you ain't got sharp teeth. Like, they will eat you. So, as I was saying, and I distracted myself with my little wild story. As I was saying, Major Arcana, the Magician, completion of a cycle, coming to the culmination, being your purpose, is being yourself, unique experience from your perspective, which is individuated and decided by you, ultimately, always. And so what I see with the Magician here is an invitation. Number one is an invitation, in my opinion, and it's also the completion of a cycle, meaning like the ball is in your court. And it's here the opportunity is presented to go deeper into our creative purpose. Creativity doesn't have to look like being an artist. It can just look like creating the life that you actually desire, or constructing the existence that is an actual reflection of who you are as a person. Those are all creative works and creative projects. And so as we go further and further into our purpose, and as we recognize, oh, I remember what I was saying before. People have this idea that if you don't have, people have this idea that if you don't have all the necessities of humanity, that you are limited from having the ultimate experience. And that can be true in the most material or like grotesque of ways, meaning like of the body, of the flesh, of the mortality. Yeah, of course that can be true. If you don't have access to food and water and shelter, you're not going to have a lot of energy to do the things that, humans seem to like to do, and that we've been socialized and conditioned into enjoying as activities. But at the same time, existence is interacting with everybody all the time, made everybody, did everything. So just because you're not having the peak human experience doesn't mean you're not having a extremely in-depth, blessed and fulfilled being experience. You don't have to have the ultimate human life to be getting the richness of your experience. You just need to be perceiving it through a richer lens than people, even if they give you credit for it or not. And then, from your experience, you're gaining everything. So you can if you're gaining everything from your experience that you need to be gaining, it doesn't really matter what the quality of the experience is, because you're turning it into gold either way. So again, an invitation here with the concern to go deeper into your humanity. I'm of a belief that we're not quite human yet. I think we aspire to be human, but there's still this real draw to the animal kingdom and to the association of us with animals, which isn't to say that we're not all like beings and living creatures sharing earth space, and that we're not all valuable, because of course we are, but that there are distinctions between quality and kind and dimensions of experience, and there's no problem in having an appreciation for that, which doesn't necessarily need to negate any other experience. But humans have to decide that being human is something beyond being primal in our intentionality. And so the Magician, in my opinion, this March is the opportunity to just go deeper into your being and to be more sincere and honest and present in your experience, and seeing how that naturally creates ripple effects in your environment and in your life of synchronicity that then guide you to new vistas that you may not have even known were in alignment with your journey, but that you've just yet to really have the opportunity to be exposed to, go upon, experience, know, etc. Our opportunity obstacle card is that outside of us, which we see as blockade, which I think of as a negative polarization, as a hurdle, which I think of as a neutral polarization, and as a stepping stone, which I think of as a positive polarization. And we have the one and only muse of the tarot, the Queen of Cups. Okay. So cups is the suit of water, as I had mentioned earlier. It's the suit of creativity. It's a suit of emotions and emotional intelligence, and creativity, including procreativity, one-on-one relationships, uh, lover-lover relationships, romance, but also just like what romance ends up creating, which is generations of relatives. um, and so, but that sort of like one by one energy is what's indicative in the cups or chalices. And then emotional intelligence, as most people who listen to me well know, is, in my opinion, a four-step process. You feel a way, you recognize you feel a way, recognizing you feel a way, you look back at your personal history and discover and decide how you might have arrived at feeling that way as a result of your experiences. And then based on the first three, you decide how you're going to act. But in the Western world, which is cis white heteropatriarchal, we learn steps 1 and 4. So we feel a way and we react without any accountability in between as to how we decide to feel and act those ways, or how we arrive at feeling and act those ways. And so we just rage in Cajuns, okay? But when we are coming into our emotional maturity, we take accountability for our experience and we take accountability for our part in the experience. We're not under the lab coat fallacy. That is an intentional patriarchal reference. We are not under the lab coat fallacy that we can be a part of our experience and have no influence upon it. We are deciders. We are there. It doesn't mean we get to choose every single circumstance that we arrive upon, but that once we come through a circumstance, we are at liberty to decide what we do with it emotionally from our perspective, carrying it forward as a blockade, a hurdle, or a stepping stone. The reason I think of hurdle as neutrals, because some, you know what they're for. Sometimes you clear them, sometimes you don't. It just depends on the context of the situation. So the Queen of Cups is, well, one, yes, a muse, but also really indicative of sort of presenting and being honest in our emotional intent. Presenting our cup with the joy of its fullness. Presenting our cup with the joy of its fullness, really no matter how full it is, because it's relative. When we've been carrying around an empty cup for 25 years and we've filled it in an inch, that inch is precious to us, right? So it doesn't really matter if somebody else's cup has been full their whole life, because we earn that inch and it's our own sustenance. And we don't need to compare it to anybody else's sustenance. Obviously, we're human and we are socialized and conditioned. We have socialized and conditioned ourselves to be negative and nihilistic and negating, so comparison is a natural byproduct of that. But ultimately, it's about what your cup has been doing your whole existence, not what other people's cups have been doing their whole existence. So it's like presenting your cup with the fullness that it is, with appreciation and richness and sincerity, and, really allowing ourselves to share in the wealth of our experience and our perspectives and our emotionality, so that we can begin to really share the weight of the personal history that we collectively have as communities, various communities, by the arbitrary but made real demographics that we have had and been exposed to throughout our Earth walk journey on in the Earth Hotel called this planet. So the Queen of Cups is really here to remember to remind us to have joy and appreciation and reverence for what it is that we do carry. And the more we're willing to excavate our experience, the more we can, separate what was worthwhile to us and preferred to us to what wasn't. And just from that, always leaning, working, doing more of what we prefer in order to ensure that we exist in that environment, because your perspective is your environment and you are your environment. And as long as you're acting in the ways that you prefer, then you live in an environment that is reflective of that. And existence has no option but to meet you at that perspective, because it's the only one that you're interacting with and occupying. And so the Queen of Cups to me is also really the trust in the fulfillment of your experience through your emotional intelligence, not being afraid of what you feel and what it brings on and out, but really appreciating the richness of how much you can be learned through both what it is you do and don't want. Finally, we have the advantage or the aversion card. Advantage or aversion card is internally what about your character is going to work for you or against you, essentially, like what you're already working with and whether you're utilizing it in the best way possible. And not surprisingly, considering the first two, Magician and the Queen of Cups, we have the Three of Swords. Three of Swords. This is beautiful. Let's see if I can guess this is the money spot. Okay, so the Three of Swords. Swords is a suit of air. It's a suit of intellect, intellectualizing our emotions. Intellectualizing our emotions is when we feel a way, and then we tell ourselves it's irrelevant that we feel that way, which does not stop our feelings from being felt, but just makes our mind treat our feelings in a derogatory manner, which doesn't serve us because it means we're undermining our own experience and we're not appreciative of how our intellect and our emotions can work together to make us a more cohesive and joyful person. And the Three of Swords has a bad rep. In the tarot, it's a card that people are like, oh god, like, I don't want that. But it is a card. It's a Phoenix card. It's a card about rising from the ashes and the ashes. It's a card of no longer making an ass out of yourself and being sincere enough about where you are emotionally that it doesn't look the same to you egotistically to be sincere and truthful, right? There are times in our emotional immaturity and in our over intellectualizing emotions where we can egoistically undermine the importance of the truth for us, not only for our experience and for the environment, but for the nature of existence. But when we come to an intellectually mature place where we do not use our intellect to eradicate or undermine or ignore or suppress our emotional intelligence, then we arrive into a place where the ego shifts into a more neutral stance and does not view the experience or the circumstance or the truth from the same negativity. It embraces the truth as just a natural byproduct of existence. And so it isn't a matter of, life or death to our vanity, whether the truth is known, because it's just what there is. And so what there is to do. I hope that was helpful. March, the Magician, the Queen of Cups, and the Three of Swords. May this reading find you well. If you know what's been going on with me and you've wished me well, thank you. It's multidimensional in experience, and there are times of grieving and there are also times of joy. And I'm often in both and in the liminal space in between them. So thank you. I'll see you in April and take care. Happy 2020.